Hello and welcome to the National Center for the Middle Market's webinar, Driving Growth in the Middle Market. In this webinar, NCMM Managing Director Doug Farron will be joined by experts from Aon to break down the report's findings and offer practical guidance to middle market leaders on how to harness these drivers to achieve sustainable growth. My name is Kim, and I will monitor the Q&A function throughout the webinar. Feel free to drop any questions you have in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen at any point throughout the presentation, and our panelists will answer your questions at the end. Please note that this session will be recorded and uploaded to our center's website for future on-demand viewing. And now, I am pleased to introduce NCMM's Managing Director, Doug Farron.
Thank you, Kim, and thanks to everyone for joining us today. I'm really excited about this event where we're going to be talking with our friends at Aon about research that we recently conducted, looking at some of the top growth drivers within the middle market. As Kim said, we encourage questions, so please feel free to submit those as we wrap up today's session. We're going to leave some time at the end for myself as well as our panelists to address as many of those questions as we can. So let's go into, let's see, advance my slide here. Hold on. Okay. Just got it. I want to introduce our panelists that are joining me today, all senior executives at Aon. So first, I'd like to introduce Jeff Alpa. Jeff is the President and Chief Commercial Officer for North America. Welcome, Jeff.
Thanks, Doug.
And next we have Farheen Dam. Farheen is the Health Solutions Leader for North America at Aon. Welcome, Farheen.
Thank you very much.
And then last we have Don Ortegal. Don is the Executive Vice President for North America at Aon. Welcome, Don.
Thank you, Doug.
So I'm going to go through some information here up front, talk a little bit about the study, talk a little bit about some of the key findings, and then I'm going to bring in each of these panelists at certain points for the conversation as we talk about some of their areas of expertise. And then, as I mentioned at the end, we're going to come back together for more of a group discussion and then to address any questions that our attendees have today. So first of all, for those of you who aren't familiar with the National Center for the Middle Market, we are a research center located at The Ohio State University Fisher College of Business. We are in our 14th year, and during that time, our mission has remained the same. We exist really for a single purpose, and that is to help support the growth of the U.S. middle market. We do that in a number of different ways. It be through research with projects like this one. We have our middle market indicator, which is a semi-annual survey of 1,000 mid-sized companies. But essentially, we collect a lot of data, create insights, and then share those insights through outreach and engagement, both in live events and virtual events like this one today. We also take part in quite a bit of education, whether that be for our undergraduate students here at the college. We also do executive education, training, presentations, and so forth. So that's a little bit about us. And we're really pleased to have partnered with Aon. We started this project in the spring. And really, our mutual goals were, again, to look at some of the growth drivers within middle market companies. Well, how did we do that? We spent a lot of time thinking about a survey and collecting data from the right sample of companies that would give us these insights. So essentially, we ended up surveying 400 financial decision makers across both the US and Canada. A few of the criteria that were really important and to keep these in mind as you listen to these insights. Of course, these were all senior level decision makers. They do have 500 employees or more at their company with revenues between 50 million and $1 billion. So almost identical to the definition that the NCMM uses, just focusing on a little bit more at the higher end. The data was collected between June 27th and July 17th, so over the course of the summer. And some interesting metrics to kind of share from the companies that we surveyed. The average growth rate for these companies was 14.2%. That's year over year revenue growth. And then from an employment growth standpoint, 13.8%. I mentioned that we measure on a semi-annual basis the growth of the middle market, and these numbers outpace what we've been seeing in our MMI results. Finally, we wanted to look specifically at the high growth firms. So there was a subset, call it roughly 25%, or the actual number was 96 of the companies, told us that they were reporting 20% or higher year over year revenue growth. So we really wanted to understand what was it that's unique or different about those companies, or how are they managing themselves internally to achieve this type of growth. So again, the report, you may have seen it. It actually published a little over a month ago, so it's been out into the marketplace. But again, talks a lot about the insights related to the factors that drive growth, and in some cases, differences even regionally between the US and Canadian firms that we talk to. So the first thing I'm going to do is just go through some of the key insights that we found. The first is that people are a differentiator for these high growth companies. No surprise to us, really. I mean, talent has been one of the big issues and challenges across the middle market for a number of years. But to actually see data that supports the understanding that talent really is a differentiator was a huge insight for us, and I believe the Aon folks as well. We're going to talk about all these insights and reactions to them. Second is that sustaining and nurturing your talent within your company, there are challenges that come with that. It's difficult to attract, retain, develop. So there are certain issues that need to be addressed when thinking about how to maintain the talent base at your company. On a related level, dealing with these workforce challenges are usually managed most effectively by thinking about workforce improvement efforts. We're going to talk about some of those, and Farheen specifically, I've got some questions to think about. What does that really mean when we think about these improvement efforts? Then we shift to another theme that emerged, which was risk. And one of the big findings of the study was that cybersecurity risk escalates as companies grow, as they become larger and go through these different growth cycles. And oftentimes, the issue of cybersecurity gets addressed too late in the process. We'll talk about more in terms of what that means. From a broader standpoint, as we think about risk, the risk landscape for these growing middle market companies requires that they take more of an anticipatory approach rather than a reactionary approach to the various factors of risk. And I'll share some of those that we found in the study as some of the most prominent or troublesome risks that middle market companies are seeing and experiencing right now. And then the final thing, just, I'd say on a broader level, AI has been such a hot topic over the last 18 months. And certainly, we acknowledge through this study that the emergence of AI presents itself as an exciting opportunity, ways to help drive and support growth, create productivity, efficiency, lower costs, lots of benefits. Yet there's still lots that still needs to be understood, and it's considered amongst many middle market companies as an exciting yet evolving opportunity. So, we'll see where that path leads, and as a center, we're continuing to kind of monitor those things. So those are the key insights. Just to recap quickly what we found in the study, I'd like to first invite Don Ortigal in for a few questions. So Don, you were a very key part of this whole relationship in terms of Aon working with the NCMM, and of course participated throughout the entire process. So I know you're very familiar with the work and the findings and so forth. But could you first just start with sharing with the audience, why was it important for Aon to work with the NCMM and commissioning this type of study where we were specifically taking a deep dive into risk and human capital, both in the US and Canada? Can you kind of describe that for us a bit?
Yeah, it'd be great. And thank you, Doug, again for having Farheen, Jeff, and me here today. I mean, I can't tell you from the very beginning, you said, right, we've been working together for a while, but how thrilled we are to be part of the conversation and the partnership, right, with the center. I mean, you guys have done phenomenal work. And so the why is really quite simple, right? We have continued to be so impressed with the work that you and your other partners have done around this commitment, right, to truly understanding the needs of middle market. And so after we first spoke a little bit about the growth project, and then keying in on, hey, if we do this, we really want to do it for people, risk, and technology. Those are some of the client themes that we really keep seeing over and over. We immediately knew that you guys were the right partner, and your entire team, Doug. And I know Kim's on today. I hope Lauren's on as well, just to name a couple of them. They were phenomenal, right? Because, and for those that, we won't go through all the sausage making right now, but we really worked hard together over the last few months. And I know you're chuckling now, but I know we had a couple of calls where we pushed each other, right, to make sure the research study was as good as possible. And so I hope people do take the time to take a look at it. But as for Aon, in terms of just how we operate and things like that, I mean, for those that aren't familiar, right, we are in the business of helping our clients make better informed decisions. And so using data and analytics was really part of why we wanted to partner with the center, right? And again, we've got lots of data, a lot of clients and all that fun stuff. But really, we wanted to, as Doug said, we really wanted to get into what are the key growth drivers, right? And we wanted some fresh data from business leaders in this segment. And so ultimately, together, that kind of supported your mission, but it also supported our mission. When we think about, and as you said, the US and Canada, I know Canada was a little bit broader reach than you normally have, but Farheen, Jeff, and I, we all focus and support clients and colleagues in both US and Canada. So it was really important to us from the very beginning that we gained insights from both types of companies, right, in this important sector. And so, again, and not to belabor it too much, but we truly do believe that better data leads to better decisions and better outcomes. And so that's why we did that, and why we worked so hard with you and your team on that point. I think you had another part to your question, which was really around why risk capital and human capital. Yes. And there's really two reasons that from our perspective. One is going in, we already believed that was vital, right, for middle market companies. And of course, the research immediately confirmed that. So thanks to those 400 business leaders and companies out there that responded to the survey. But second, that's how we're organized at Aon to support our clients, right? So as we look at and we dive deeper in conversation today around the growth drivers and the ones you've highlighted already, as we think about it, people are the keys to the fastest growing companies. And then we get into cyber, and you mentioned that as well. And I know we'll talk about that a little bit more. But ultimately, the insights for both risk and human capital are really what are the foundations of how you make better decisions and a solid risk management strategy and people strategy. So all that together, we feel like, okay, we've learned a lot. Now we can lean in to help companies better understand what's going on. And to your point, right, those companies that are growing double digit, we all can learn from them.
Yeah. I appreciate that backdrop, and we felt just as strongly, particularly as we were, brainstorming across what topics to explore. These were ones that resonated with the NCMM as well, and our kind of broader view of the middle market. So it was a really great fit. And so my next question for you, Don, is as you look at these key insights, so being part of the work and helping shape the report, and were there anything here on this list that really jumps out to you, or was there something that surprised you, or maybe is a little bit more important than you may have thought, or less important? What is your take when you look at these insights?
Well, I guess I'd say there's two things that really jumped out at me. But for those that haven't gotten into the research yet, just be ready, like do it on a weekend. Like this, it's 20 pages. There are lots of data points in there. So we could spend an hour and a half just talking about what surprised us, but I'll highlight two, Doug. I think two would be enough probably. The first one is around risk management and particularly cybersecurity. And you hit on it a little bit earlier, but I just want to call it out again. So for those, in terms of the study, the research found that 70% of high growth middle market companies have experienced a cyber breach. Okay. So again, highlighting the seriousness of what the risk landscape looks like today. And again, that's not new, right? The 70% seems like a high number, so that's a little bit alarming. But what surprised me was the fact that the organizations then adopted a reactive stance towards risk management. So cyber's not new to any of us. And so that's what really kind of surprised me was the number of reactive responses to a risk like cyber, right? So it just underscores the urgent need for more proactive strategies. And then the second area that jumped out at me was around, and this is kind of a good one, but it just underscores the importance of it, was around the operational efficiencies. And so the research told us that 84% indicated improving operational efficiencies was a key driver to their growth. So that was a pretty high number, 84%. And so that was a second surprise for me. And then I would say, let me use like a human capital example this time, because again, we want to think about this risk in human capital. One of the things that we've seen is specifically around operational efficiencies is around adoption of a pooled employer plan. And so for those that aren't familiar with that, PEP for short, the PEP will simplify your retirement plan, the administrative piece of it, reduce the risk, and improve the outcome for your employees. So again, our operational efficiencies, so it's an opportunity for 84% of them. So by joining a PEP, not only can you reduce the admin, you get that operational efficiency we just talked about, you take on less risk, and there's huge benefits of scale, leading to, again, lower costs and better outcomes for your employees. So I think those are the two things, Doug, that really jumped out at me. There's lots of other nuggets in here, and maybe we'll get to some more today, but those would be the two.
Yeah, great. That was a great backdrop and also a great segue into going a little bit deeper into that first theme around people. So I'd like to invite Farheen in. I have a few questions for her. And, we're looking at some data here. So, we're one of the things that stood out was thinking about how high growth, again, 20% revenue year over year growth or higher, how they view their talent as differentiating. You can see a quote from one of the respondents here, kind of supporting the idea that talent is really an accelerator for their business. So, Farheen, I'd like to ask you a few questions as it relates to some of our findings and your expertise in particular. Can you tell us how much does a differentiated workforce influence or have an impact on the growth of a company? And could you maybe talk about that relationship between workforce differentiation and revenue growth?
Yeah, I mean, the answer, it's a resounding yes, right? And it was your first key insight, right? People are the differentiator, especially when you look at the data in the survey of the high growth firms. At Aon, we believe that thriving organizations really are built on because of thriving employees. And I think the study by NCMM really emphasizes this. What really stood out to me was that 4 out of 5 of the high growth companies really cited their talent as their difference in what delivered their growth and how important it was to growth. And you can see the 20% stat on the page, right, about companies that are driving year over year revenue growth of 20%. It's impressive 90% of them say that having the right talent is the key to their growth performance. And for me, to double click on that, it's not just about having the best talent and finding the right talent. It's really about how you retain them, how you upskill them as your companies and your business needs change, and how you keep them healthy and productive and empowered. And empowered is an interesting concept. It's one that we're talking to our clients a lot about right now. When employees feel empowered and that their contributions to the firm are valued, they thrive. They're more innovative. They create new ideas, right? They're more able to solve complex problems. And that translates into their own professional growth, but it also drives organizational growth.
Right. Yep. And as I mentioned earlier, we've been monitoring this topic for a number of years, and we've been collecting data on middle market performance and sentiment since 2012. And really around 2015 or so, we started seeing talent emerge as one of the top 1 or 2 challenges ongoing for the middle market. And in some ways, we saw this in this study as well. Can you talk about some of the specific challenges that mid-sized companies face from an attraction, retention, benefits, regulatory? I mean, this can be thought about in a lot of different angles, right? So it's an entire series of things that relate to talent. What are the biggest challenges that you see from your point of view?
Yeah, I mean, to reiterate what you said, what we've seen over the last couple of years across all segment sizes, small, mid, and large employers, is that people and talent are C-suite issues, right? And so that's been it's been great working in the total rewards human capital consulting space for my career. This time and this energy around talent and the impact to business and the future of business, it's such a C-suite agenda right now. But you talked about the challenges, and I think you see that in the survey results, right? Half of the companies that NCMM surveyed reported a tough time finding the right talent, and then a near equal amount reported having a tough time in retaining them. And so, what are the challenges that orgs face around talent management? There are three that I would highlight. The first is good skilled talent is hard to find, right? I mean, that came through really loud and clear in the research. Skill gaps, particularly digital skill gaps, talent shortages, the acceleration of skill renewals are all issues that we're advising our clients about each and every day. The second challenge, particularly that mid-market companies, but all are facing, is the cost of healthcare. The majority of clients in the US, but some in Canada, provide employer-sponsored healthcare. Healthcare trend is at a level that we have not seen in over a decade. It's rising at 9% for 2025. For perspective, Doug, that number was 4 or 5% just a couple of years ago. And so what that does is when healthcare costs are accelerating higher than inflation, right, higher than wages, it puts enormous pressure on companies to spend more on healthcare benefits and not necessarily on other things that employees value: pay, compensation, other benefits, pay time off, right? So employers are having to tackle, particularly mid-market employers are having to tackle healthcare more creatively and aggressively. And if they don't, because of that trend, they're really sort of being put in this challenging situation of how do I provide the benefits that my employees value most, healthcare and pay, when one is feeling a lot of pressure and rising at costs much higher than wages and inflation.
Sure. Yep.
And then I think the third challenge I would highlight is regulatory and fiduciary scrutiny. We're seeing a rapid expansion of regulatory requirements and fiduciary requirements. That creates a lot of liability for our clients, but it also creates a lot of administrative burden, particularly for mid-market employers. I know we just finished the election, so we expect that will have some changes in, the next administration will have some changes in terms of the impact of regulatory and fiduciary requirements for employers. But those are some of the challenges that all clients are facing when they think about talent management.
Yep. Let's explore that topic of benefits a little bit further, and especially as you consider, things that have happened in the workplace over the last 4 or 5 years have been somewhat unprecedented. But, whether it be from the expectations that employees have now, or we often here at the center talk about a lot of transition and generational shifts that are going to be happening, even shifts among different regions. And of course, as Don reiterated, we did include some Canadian companies this as well. What do you think companies should be doing to adjust or bulk up or shift their benefits so that they can become more effective at attracting and retaining talent?
Yeah. So it's a balance, right? We just talked about the cost pressures that employers are feeling.
Yep.
One thing, and I can't believe we're still talking about COVID, but one thing that happened through COVID is that the relationship between the employee and the employer changed. There became a greater trust between the employee of their employer to provide them with guidance and benefits and advice through what was a really difficult period. And so it changed what employees expect of their employers. Employees now have higher expectations of their employees than they did pre-COVID, right? They're expecting them to give more, address more, help them with things that are maybe inequalities. And so that creates a lot more pressure on the employer to meet people with where they are versus being, sort of general in terms of the benefits that they cover. And
Sure.
so they're being asked by their employees to address really specific, like equality issues, employee expectation issues. And if you don't address them, right, it can create negative employee perception or sentiment. And now that information is out there for the public to consume, right? So you can go on Glassdoor, you can go on all these different websites, right? And as you're looking to join a company, you can find out a lot about what employees feel are, what employees that work there, what's the sentiment, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you're really having to, as an employer, right, not just provide benefits and compensation, but you're really challenged with, how do I meet people with where they are, where they are, and taking into account things like generational, regional, ethnic needs, income level, social determinants of health. It's a really challenging time for employers, and the market's moving at a really fast and evolving pace.
Right.
But I think it gives the mid market employer a real opportunity because they have the ability to adapt, right? And pivot more quickly than the larger employer, right? They have more resources than the smaller employer, and they could sort of pivot their total reward strategy much more nimbly than other employers to really meet the needs of the workforce today and the workforce in the future.
Yeah, great point. The nimbleness of the mid-sized companies is often maybe an overlooked advantage that they have. Last question for you, Farheen, on this topic.
Great.
What advice would you give to if there's a middle market company out there listening to this session thinking, wow, what could be like the one or two things I could do to make my talent a differentiator other than some things you've already discussed? Is there any other advice you would give?
Yeah. Maybe three things instead of two things. So
Okay, yeah.
it's always good to start with understanding your talent needs. And one way to do that is through sensing, right? Through surveys or through listening groups and using what you hear to focus on the value creation you want to create for your employees, but also the value creation you want to create for your organization. Second, and Don talked about this in his opening remarks, leveraging data and analytics. This is something at Aon and personally I'm really passionate about. Using data and analytics to measure your progress against your goals. But also, I think we've used data and analytics to predict for a long time, but now we're starting to use them to sort of prescribe for the future. So really thinking about how data and analytics is tied to your talent strategy. And then finally, embrace innovation. There's so much innovation right now happening in benefits in the talent landscape. Explore what makes sense for your organization.
Yeah, those are excellent tips. So I'm going to shift over into the risk theme, and I'd like to invite Jeff into the discussion. So, Jeff, my first question for you, as we look at some of the data that I'm showing here, yeah, I mentioned this in some of the key insights too. 70%, 7 out of 10 of the high growth companies have experienced cyber breach. You can see here on the right the different risks that these companies are saying are either extremely or very challenging for them, including cyber, competitors, geopolitical risks, and so forth. Uh, can you explain the importance of really being proactive in identifying and managing risks and why it's so critical for companies to constantly be thinking about this as their business evolves, as their industry evolves, certain things start to come into play. Why is that so important?
Listen, Doug, thank you so much. And I'll tell you, this builds a lot on what Don had said as well as Farheen. But as the research shows, and you can see it right there, middle market firms are known for rapid growth as well as agility, and allows them to seize market opportunities and be more competitive and grow revenues faster than larger scale companies. However, at the same time, many of those mid-sized organizations are looking at the risk management strategies often after a crisis as opposed to proactively addressing their risk management strategies in line with their business and growth strategies going forward. So, as we saw in the report, 73% of US and 56% of Canadian middle market organizations are challenged by strategic risk. We see a massive opportunity for a shift from a reactive to a proactive mindset regarding risk management, especially in middle market. So, what does that mean? It means regularly assessing risk is crucial to the middle market organizations, especially as their business landscape evolves. with technological advancements, as well as changing consumer preferences, as well as changes in the regulatory environment, as we talked about earlier. So organizations must stay ahead of these threats by partnering with credentialed providers that can help consult with them, as well as rethink traditional risk management strategies. So to tackle these challenges and be proactive, firms need to be flexible and regularly update their risk management plan and address current vulnerabilities, as well as anticipate new risks that may be on the horizon that could disrupt their operations or harm their reputation. So investing in an advanced risk management assessment tool that can utilize real-time data, and this is something Farheen just talked about, is how important data and analytics is to improve decision making. It can improve the predictive capabilities to help make better decisions, not just in the here and now, but help to predict future risks. So additionally, fostering a culture of risk management awareness is really essential to a successful risk management strategy. So everyone from entry-level staff to senior executives should be trained to recognize and respond to potential threats, making risk management a team effort across an organization. So we believe it's collaboration across departments is vital to create a clear picture on the holistic risk profile a company is facing and have a coordinated risk management strategy. So in summary, proactively managing risk on a 1, 3, 5-year plan can help, and this is what we advise our clients, this can help to lead to sustained growth, innovation, and success, even in challenging times.
Okay. On the flip side of that, we also see a common issue, and it was actually supported by this study, that sometimes companies underestimate their risks. We actually have a verbatim quote here on the slide from one of our respondents, a CEO at a healthcare products and services company, who, when asked about how they think about risk management, they said, well, whatever happens will happen. That's probably not the best approach. Are there industries where you see this type of behavior being prevalent, and maybe what are some of the additional consequences of not being proactive when it comes to managing risk?
Yeah, so absolutely, Doug. I would say many middle market companies often underestimate the risks that they face, and that can really backfire. And we've seen it. These companies are in the middle of a high growth within their businesses and their operations, and they're looking at all of the upside opportunities, but often miss some of the risks that are staring them in the face. As we've seen in the research, it's not uncommon to encounter, and you look at the quote that we have posted, what happens will happen, and we've seen that in many cases, and that attitude towards managing risk can be unsettling. But honestly, we can't stress enough how important it is to stay alert, be proactive, and prepare for what's ahead, in addition to focusing on the growth and upside opportunities of middle market firm. It's also worth noting that these risks are dynamic and can change depending on the industry. Take healthcare, for example, Doug. Companies might accidentally overlook privacy risk when they're dealing with sensitive patient data, and that could lead to breaches that compromise patient confidentiality. So pretty significant risk. They may be looking at their medical malpractice risk and others, but may overlook their privacy risk. In financial institutions, for example, there's a growing threat from cyber crimes and fraud, and many still downplay, especially as cyber attacks get more sophisticated. They still many of these companies downplay those risks. And let's not forget about manufacturing firms. Firms might ignore operational risk tied to supply chains, for example, and disruptions in this interconnected world. So a lot of these risks are interconnected, and it's important to stay on top of these trends and look at risk proactively, but also holistically. The fallout from overlooking these risks can be huge, leading to financial loss, bankruptcy, damage to reputation, legal trouble, even loss of market share versus the competition, Doug.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've mentioned cybersecurity a few times already throughout this session. We've got data points that support that it's a really big issue. Are
Yeah.
there any unique challenges that you see around the cybersecurity approach for middle market companies?
Yeah, I'll tell you, this is something that, and one really good question, and you can see the stats and how important this is, cyber risk on the risk profile and the risk issues of every boardroom table. So I would say middle market companies have their own set of challenges, especially when it comes to cybersecurity. And as I mentioned, as these businesses grow, and oftentimes it's rapid growth, they often face more cyber threats that can really disrupt their operations. So with greater reliance on digital technology, for example, these risks can get larger, making it even more important to stay vigilant. And unfortunately, many of these companies don't have the resources internally or expertise to tackle these complex threats proactively. So
Right.
leading them to be more reactive when a breach happens as opposed to being proactive. And this is a point that Farheen made earlier. And I just wanted to point out how tough it is to find talent. And this goes to risk management and cyber talent in particular. Very hard to come by, and we're seeing challenges within organizations to be able to have that talent internally and attract that talent. And so this is a big concern for businesses. As our study found, that companies that have recently faced a cyber breach are much more motivated to strengthen their internal risk management capabilities, no matter how fast they're growing. For example, Doug, only 23% of businesses that have never had a breach prioritize hiring risk management experts. Only 23%. Take the flip side of that, that number jumps to 51% of companies that have dealt with a breach in the past year, showing a clear shift in focus towards risk management for a company that has recently had a breach. So creating awareness, which is important as far as this proactive risk management strategy, as I mentioned earlier. So this reactive approach can lead to a significant damage before companies can put corrective measures in place, Doug.
Yeah, my last question for you, Jeff. We put a lot of emphasis in this work around the high growth companies. Do you feel like that a company that's on a very high growth trajectory, does it increase the vulnerability or maybe the possibility of them overlooking some of these issues because they're so focused on, sustaining that growth path?
Yeah, so absolutely, Doug, and we see higher growth can indeed create certain vulnerabilities or increase the likelihood of minimizing or ignoring potential cyber risks, for example. So rapid are often prioritizing the expansion and of that company, the hyper growth of the company, and the profitability of that company, which can unintentionally leave them more exposed to cyber threats. So, the increased digital footprint that a company's growth can also create new points of vulnerability, as I mentioned earlier, and then that they may not have previously considered as they're growing so rapidly, making it essential for these organizations to continuously reassess their risk management strategies. In this context, I would say finding the right partner to assess a company's current state and mitigate a cyber risk can be a really smart move. What we tell the companies that we interact with is that a knowledgeable partner can provide valuable insights into vulnerabilities that may have been overlooked and help identify and implement effective cybersecurity measures that are really tailored to that company's specific needs within their growth trajectory. But as we mentioned earlier, Doug, within the particular industry in which they're competing. And we also see affordability is often seen as a barrier to cyber risk insurance coverage. And that's important to note that today there are many options for customization that can align coverage with a company's budget, especially emerging growth, middle market companies. And by adapting a proactive approach to cybersecurity with expert guidance and exploring tailored, cost-effective insurance solutions, these firms can safeguard their interests and maintain that growth trajectory without compromising their security, Doug.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Those are some really great comments and adds a lot of context to the research insight. So for our last topic today, I'm gonna bring everybody on the panel in for this last discussion around technology and AI. So I'm gonna stop my screen share there so we can just really have a conversation. And my first question is for you, Don, which is talk to us a little bit about how middle market companies are thinking about AI in particular as maybe a catalyst to help drive growth.
Sure, Doug. And I think so, and some of this will maybe overlap a little bit with what Jeff said and Farheen said a little bit when we think about technology and predictive analytics. But, as we think about Gen AI, right, it's truly a game changer and candidly for all companies, right, of any size and scope. But I saw a recent study from Microsoft that showed that 78% of workers in the US are using Gen AI at work. So 78%, right? It went on to say though that, because a lot of times you think, okay, maybe it's just the earlier career colleagues, newer to the field, so on and so forth. But it pointed out that this was happening across generational. So from a mid-market perspective, I think it's really interesting around thinking about how it can fuel growth, efficiency, and we just barely hit on this earlier, like leveling the playing field, right? No matter what size organization you are, and especially for mid-market companies. So I think AI can absolutely ramp up the operational efficiency across various functions. Just simply, right? It can automate tasks for data entry. It can help with customer service requests. And then I think it can absolutely save valuable time and resources and then kind of freeing up your team to be more strategic. And again, back to growth, focusing on key elements of growth. The last thing, and I said it just a minute ago around predictive analytics, clearly there's an opportunity there, right? For us to better understand where our demand's coming for, how we allocate resources, et cetera. So I think those are the key things, Doug, at the end of the day around Gen AI for mid-market companies.
Yep. Farheen, how about from a talent optimization standpoint? Are you seeing or, can you talk to us a little bit about the role that AI may play, especially as you talked about some of the challenges and skills gaps and finding people. Is AI, does that represent an opportunity to maybe address some of those challenges?
Yeah, completely. I mean, AI is disrupting all areas of business strategy. I was reading something last night. It was a stat that said for every dollar a company invests in AI, they're realizing $3.50 in return, and that they're realizing it in 14 months, right? So Gen AI is impacting bottom line, and it's showing really great promise in all areas of HR and talent optimization. What's really been amazing to watch over the last couple of years is how automation now enables delivery of HR work across every part of the employee lifecycle. There's three places we think we're going to see the most impact for employers, for organizations. One is people analytics, two is talent acquisition, and three is learning and development. So I thought I could double click and give you an example of how we're seeing AI show up in talent acquisition. Couple of places. So we're helping clients define future workforce skills, helping them answer the question of what exactly are the AI skills that are needed in the future for their organization. We're also helping organizations look at how AI is going to impact roles. So through augmentation or replacement of tasks. So we've built solutions that actually analyze job functions today and will tell an employer what degree of impact AI will have on each of those roles. I mean, a lot of organizations today are already using Gen AI to write job descriptions, so talent management and acquisition. But we've built a tool at Aon, we call it the Geographic Talent Optimization Tool. It uses AI to help identify what digital skills are available in a given geography. So as an employer, mid-market employer, any employer is thinking about how they recruit and they attract the digital skills, employees with digital skills. We can help them make really better decisions on which geographies they should target and how they can increase their chances of retaining top talent. And while that's an AI focus, we're actually using AI to create and build all of those tools that we're using to help our clients.
Yeah, yeah, really good examples there. I think for the middle market who's traditionally resource constrained, I mean, this is a huge opportunity to address, either those repetitive or recurring things that have the opportunity to become so much more efficient. So, yeah, something
And the
that,
return is quick, Doug. I mean, that
yeah,
return is it's like 12 to 14 months, which is
yeah,
amazing.
yeah, exactly. So, Jeff, just kind of continuing on this
Yep.
theme, I mean, there has been some hesitancy though, because even though middle market companies are maybe testing, exploring, learning more about how AI can work for their business, they clearly understand that there are some new risks that come into play,
Yep.
particularly as it might relate around privacy, security. I mean, could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely, Doug, and I couldn't agree more. Farheen talked about the upside opportunities within AI, and for a lot of these middle market companies, it's a game changer, right? The rate of adoption by middle market companies in this research is really exciting, and it can lead to better logistics, improved customer service and customer experience, and also optimize talent. And we've seen so many examples of that. However, these opportunities come with their risks and challenges, as you suggest. I would say, from a security perspective, AI systems really rely on a vast amounts of data, and that makes them attractive targets for cyber attacks. And a breach could expose sensitive information and create serious issues as well. Additionally, AI's decision-making process can be very complex, which may hinder a true understanding of the choices, right? And also our ability to learn from some of these mistakes or justify decisions when the process lacks transparency. So, on the privacy front, AI often processes a lot of personal data, raising concerns around misuse of privacy violations, which is an emerging issue. And there's also the risk of data bias, leading to unfair or incorrect outcomes in decision making. So that's a concern that's there. This means we must enhance cybersecurity measures, be transparent about AI decision processes, and adhere to data privacy laws. So by maintaining a proactive mindset, avoiding complacency as well, businesses can better protect themselves from future threats and ensure optimal use of AI as these companies continue to grow, Doug.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to track this over the next 6 to 12 months. And as it continues to evolve, I know the NCMM has committed to monitoring this across the US middle market. So I appreciate all the insights and conversation. We're going to shift into some Q&A from the attendees. We've got a few questions that have been submitted. So I'm going to grab the first one here, submitted by Daphne, who, in listening to some of the reactive risk management approach, it actually is kind of linking this over to the human capital area. So I'm going to actually direct this to you, Farheen. And the question is, since there are good ideas kind of all throughout organizations about attraction and retention, do you see middle market companies taking risks in terms of maybe trying unconventional, untraditional solutions? Or do you feel like they lean more toward best practices that they see in the marketplace?
Yeah, it's a great question. And yes, there's completely a linkage, right? There's a really, especially at the C-suite level, there's a convergence of risk capital and people, human capital issues. So that's a great observation. And I would say to the question about innovation, 100% we're seeing mid-market organizations much more nimble and much more willing to embrace kind of innovative new ideas and solutions. I grew up as a health consultant. I do a lot of health and human capital work still. In the healthcare space, there's a lot that's happening around emerging solutions, virtual solutions, startups. You know, we talked about meeting people where they are and their distinct needs. And what we see is a lot of innovation and willingness to try these like new and innovative and really different solutions, more so in the mid market than any other segment.
Okay, got it. Next question that was submitted, Don, I'm going to direct this to you, and that is, how can middle market companies take a holistic approach to managing people, risk, and technology investments?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would advise them to do is kind of step back and take a perspective on where are they at, right? So before you can kind of look at your approach, and you said I think the question came in from a holistic approach, right? You
Yeah.
really need to build a baseline, right? You need to build a baseline of where are you at, and then as you move forward, going from there, like working with strategic partners internally and externally, looking at where are the opportunities to actually be more proactive. We talked a lot about that on the call today. But then as you think about leveraging even the work from this study, where are other companies, successful companies that are growing double digits? Where can you use those ideas and those solutions? And so Farheen just talked about a little bit on the innovation side for health. We're seeing it also on the risk side as well, where companies are willing to take different approaches, whether it be retention or structure, or different type of alternative risk ideas in order to be more holistic across risk and human capital. But ultimately, I think it starts with having a solid baseline, because then you have something to measure from and then know if the things and ideas or solutions you're implementing are working. Are they moving you in a certain direction that you want to go?
Yeah. Do you think that's a challenge for a lot of middle market leadership teams? I mean, do they struggle to kind of make those longer view strategic type decisions, or do you think it's something that they could pick up quite easily?
Yeah, the ones that we work with, I would say they're actually quite impressive, right? And we talked about how nimble they can be.
Yeah.
I think they can, right? But I think there's one opportunity, right? I think there's a broader opportunity to compare with your industry peers and competitors per se, let's call it. But to see, like, do some more sharing there across your own industry. I think there's opportunity there to accelerate some of that work.
Okay, great. The next question is also for Farheen, and that's, can you talk about the importance of total rewards packages in managing workforce related challenges?
Sure. I mean, employers are all focused on a couple of things, right? How do I attract the best people to my organization, right? How do I invest in them to enable my organization? And how do I ensure my top performers stay longer, right? And so when I think about total rewards, I think about that as the way that an employer or an organization can comprehensively balance the answers to those questions, right? It's a balance every organization makes between what my employees value most and what can I afford. Compensation, healthcare benefits, paid time off, right? Retirement benefits. Like we've talked about throughout this past hour, right? Middle market organizations have unique advantages. They can be nimble in terms of evolving their total reward strategy as their workforce needs sort of change and evolve. But they also really they're closer to their employees, right? They have a better understanding of the real needs of their population. That's something larger organizations struggle with. So they can really build a total rewards package that really addresses their own organization's unique needs, and that builds loyalty and strength among your employees. And to me, that drives culture, and culture drives organizational success.
Right. Do you think these middle market companies need to be a little bit more creative since so many of them are privately held? They don't have some of the tools like stock options or, some things that maybe enterprise companies are, it's pretty common to see. Does that involve maybe thinking a little bit creatively about what some of those rewards might be?
I think so, and I think they also tend to look for partners, like strategic partners, like brokers, benefit advisors, consultants
Yeah.
that challenge their thinking and that are creative too, right? They're looking for their partners to push and to test them and to be that resource to them to help them think more
Yep.
creatively.
Yep. Uh, the last question that we have is for you, Jeff, and that's a lot of middle market companies run very lean when it comes to resources. I think you touched on this a little bit as it relates to finding and
Right.
attracting both risk management professionals as well as cybersecurity experts.
Yeah.
Where should these companies go if they don't have the ability to have those resources in-house? Where would they lean
Yeah.
for advice, guidance, and expertise?
I'll tell you what I would look at for middle market companies is within their industry. As I mentioned, a lot of these risks, and we went deep on cyber risk, but there's a lot of other emerging risks and core risks that are property, casualty, financial lines, directors and officers, professional liability. Depending the industry that the middle market company is in, they're going to have a unique set of risks. For example, as we mentioned, healthcare, a hospital, acute care hospital will be medical malpractice risk. Others may have more catastrophic property risks, like a hotel operator or something like that. What I would do was, if they don't have the resources in house, and as I mentioned, some of these areas, the risk, for example, I mentioned cyber is so specialized, it's actually tough to find that talent. This is an area that I would say, and Farheen mentioned this, I would look to a provider like a broker, a risk management consulting firm, or a consultant like an Aon that can help these companies as they're going through high growth spurt, strategic growth opportunities. What these firms do is they bring a broader perspective of other companies within that industry that they've helped through this emerging growth environment, and they can see a lot of those risks that because of their experience dealing with others within the industry and others that have gone through that across the entire United States or globally, as we talked about with the interconnected risks around cyber threat or within supply chain and things like that. So the risks are out there. They can be very complex, and that's something that, as I look to Don and Farheen and others, these are things that we do every day as a firm, is help clients through these growth challenges as they look to protect themselves from these risks, but also drive to meet their business objectives and growth objectives, which are pretty exciting in today's economy.
Yeah, excellent. Well, we're approaching the top of the hour, so I'm going to kind of wrap us up today. But I just want to say, on behalf of the NCMM, how grateful we are to have partnered with Aon on this work, and I've really enjoyed the opportunity to talk with all of you today and get your expertise and insights as we kind of break apart what we found throughout this study and share it with a broader audience. So Jeff, Farheen, Don, again, appreciate all your time and taking some time to join us here today.
Yeah, and Doug, I just want to say a big thank you on behalf of Aon, and I'll tell you, for the folks that have follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to us through you, and want to say thanks for the opportunity.
Okay, great. Thank you. So just a couple of quick notes before we conclude. We will be posting this video of the discussion on our website, which is middlemarketcenter.org. We also have a copy of the full research study, so I would invite anyone to share with colleagues, coworkers, clients. It's great information and great insights, so please feel free to do that. And as Jeff mentioned, if there are additional follow-up questions, you can either reach out through the center, or we'll be sharing the slides today that have all of our panelists' contact information. So again, we thank you for joining us today and look forward to future insights and supporting the middle market. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.